friends, and welcome to episode 71 of Did You Bring the Hummus podcast. I'm Kimberly, your host, and I'm super excited to be here with you today. Did You Bring the Hummus is a podcast to help you go vegan. Most importantly, we'll talk about how to embrace this meaningful decision with fervor and fun. Episodes post every Monday on your favorite podcast app. Before we get started, I have one very important question for you. Did you bring the hummus? Today, I am joined by Jason and Deb DeSalvo of Coldbrook Farm. Jason is a serial entrepreneur who co-founded Strategic Outpatient Services, Inc. in 1995, a company specializing in the development and management of outpatient Positron Emission Tomography centers and is currently serving as the company's CEO. Jason has served on nonprofit boards including Ethos Farm Project, you'll hear more about that later, Reef Alliance, Tewksbury Land Trust, House Kids and Hoop-A-Paluza. Also, he served as Vice Chairman of Montclair, New Jersey's Planning Board while he was a resident there. Deb is currently working as a farmer and gardener on their regenerative farm, Coldbrook Farm, in Oldwick, New Jersey. Deb is a member of the Board of Trustees for Raritan Headwaters Association, an organization protecting the 470 square mile watershed of the north and south branches of the Raritan River. Deb and Jason lived in Montclair for almost 30 years, where they raised their two children, Stephen and Julia. While there, Deb worked as an environmental educator at Van Vleck House and Gardens and in the Montclair Public Schools. She is a master gardener and for a short period of time baked in a local tea shop. Jason holds a Bachelor's of Business Administration with honors and highest distinction from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. After getting a BA in English Literature and graduating summa cum laude from Hunter College in New York City, Deb was a traffic associate at 1010 Winds Radio and a traffic manager at Bloomberg News Radio. She left that career behind to become a stay-at-home mom. Jason and Deb live in New Jersey where they regeneratively farm heirloom grains, fruits, nuts, and vegetables. These two are absolutely adorable, and their story winds together beautifully. In this episode, you'll hear lots of love, compassion for others and our environment, inspiration, and a heck of a lot more. Jason and Deb also cover how to kindly manage changing relationships as you embark on a new way of living, how to be better stewards of our planet, and their hummus recipe. Hey, Deb. Hey, Jason. Welcome.
Good morning.
Hey, Kimberly. How are you?
I am doing well, thank you. How are you guys?
We're great.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'd love to start our conversation with your vegan journeys.
Sure. Do you want to go first? I guess they're kind of one journey.
It is one journey. It was definitely the impetus started with Jason, but so I think you should probably start and then I can chime in and like every good couple, we can edit each other.
So Deb and I have been very food-centric foodies our whole lives together. We've been together over 30 years and we have traveled all over the world to go visit growing regions for different kinds of foods. Food has always been front and center in our family life, in our travels, in our, entertainment. The idea of a great date is going to market, finding great foods and coming home and preparing them. Labels aside, and we'll get to veganism in a minute, our vegan journey started about, 16, 17 months ago. I was vegetarian in college for a while, and in college it was for ethical reasons for me. I just didn't want to harm animals. Wasn't thinking about health at all, but then went away from that, for many years. And Deb and I would eat what I would call a typical Mediterranean diet, not an unhealthy diet by most standards, but we did have fish fairly regularly. We did occasionally have meat. And for some reason, as serious environmentalists and humanitarians and people who are compassionate, the things that we now hold dear, and one of the reasons we eat the way we do, those things didn't really gel for us until a health issue came up. So we moved towards eating this way, and we're whole food, plant-based, no salt, oil, or sugar. So kind of vegan on steroids, right?
Yeah.
And I was having trouble keeping my cholesterol down, even though I've been in very good physical shape my whole life. If you would look at me physically before we went to this way of eating, I don't think you'd say this is a person that's out of shape, overweight, has health problems. And yet my cholesterol, as I was getting older, kept going up. And, no matter what I did, I was the guy that ate pizza and pulled the cheese off the pizza. I would eat red meat once.
Sacrilege.
Right. I would eat red meat once a month. My family would have ice cream and cake for dessert. I'd have fruit or skip dessert altogether. And yet my cholesterol was at 235. And my primary care physician at the time wasn't seemingly worried about it because I was athletic, because, for whatever reason, I didn't weigh a lot. I had a good BMI. And yet it was kind of plaguing me because I had one grandfather that died of a massive heart attack at 78, and another grandfather that had 3 heart attacks throughout his life, ultimately died in his 90s, but was battling heart disease his whole life. So when we moved out here, we live in Hunterdon County, New Jersey, very near where we know you live. Farm country.
Yep.
And we live on a farm, and we'll get to that later, and work on our farm. But when we moved out here, we started immediately looking for foodie places to buy great meats, dairy, and produce.
I would say in the other order: produce, meats, dairy.
Absolutely right. The first thing we looked for was
a CSA.
That's right. The first thing we looked for was a CSA and organic vegetables. We've been eating organic, and we'll get to that later too. We've been eating organic ever since we've been together. Deb ate organic since she's been a kid, before organic was really a thing. So finding a source for organic vegetables that were locally grown was literally job one. And then we looked for purveyors of, grass-fed, locally raised, quote unquote, humanely treated animals, for our protein, still under that myth, the omnivore myth, that you must have animal protein in order to survive as a human. So anyway, long story short, we found Ethos Farm up in Long Valley, and their produce was amazing. And through meeting them back in late 2019, early 2020, we also met Dr. Ron Weiss, who happens to have a medical practice right on the farm. He owns the farm, and so they have an incredible vegetable stand, if you will, and farm stand, and also a medical practice. And over the years of going there, I got to know Ron as a fellow farmer, and he became friends with us. And we started hearing.
And we were going there as patrons of this farm stand.
Exactly.
To buy the vegetables, not as patients of his practice.
Exactly. But we would hear people talk about, whole food, plant-based eating. And
no salt, no oil.
No salt, no oil, no sugar, no animal proteins, no dairy. It just seemed, especially the no oil part, to, a born Italian who olive oil is like a vitamin, red wine is like a vitamin, right? I would have more olive oil by the end of breakfast than most people have all day. So it just seemed very radical and almost cultish. And we used to jokingly call the people there a little bit kooky. They're like really sweet, but what is this?
It seems cultish.
Right. So,
but it's not.
One day in the summer of, right at the start of tomato season, it would have been July
of 2019.
No, it would have been July of 2022. One day I went and I got a very big box of tomatoes at Ethos. And Nora Pugliese, the incredibly gifted, hardworking farm manager at Ethos, lovingly said to me as I was carrying the box, "What are you going to do with them?" I said, "Deb and I are going to make a boatload of pasta sauce and just have a pasta party with all these lovely tomatoes." And she said, "Well, make sure you do it without oil." And I stopped her and I said, "All right, I've heard that many times from many people." And there was also the owner of Neighbor House there, who is also a dear friend.
And it's a bed and breakfast
It's a
down the road.
Bed and breakfast right down the road. And she says, "Yeah, no olive oil. It's not good for you. Look up the health issues." And she mentioned nutritionfacts.org, which I had never heard of. So I put it in the back of my mind. As I'm walking back, I kind of smiled and I said, "I can promise you that's not going to happen. I'm going to make tomato sauce with olive oil."
He came home and he told me about it. He's like, "These people suggested that we make the sauce without oil."
Right.
Can you believe that?
So,
It's
exactly.
crazy.
So I mean, I made my grandmother's pasta sauce recipe my entire life. I learned how to make this pasta sauce when I was literally 5 years old, right? And I've been making it for the family and love it, you know. So anyway,
There's a lot of that.
I'm walking back to the car and I see Ron Weiss, Dr. Weiss, outside of his practice planting flowers on the walkway to his practice. And I had this thing in the back of my mind about my cholesterol. I had gotten to know Ron, and he's a genius doctor. I mean, he is the most caring, loving physician I've ever met. And I was raised by a doctor. My father's a physician. And I've been in healthcare management my whole life. So I knew he was truly special. And something just clicked. And I walked up to him. I said, "Hey, Ron." He said, "Hey, Jay, how are you?" I said, "Good." I said, "Would you have any trouble being my doctor because of our friendship?" And he looked up, smiled, and he said, "Would you have any trouble listening to me as your doctor because of our friendship?"
It's a good answer.
Great.
And
Yeah.
I kind of laughed and I said, "As long as you understand there are two things I will not give up. I will not give up my olive oil and I will not give up my wine." And he looked back at me and said, "I will show you the science for how to maximize your health, and you'll take it from there." And I said, "Okay."
Hmm.
I walked inside, I got the new patient package, I filled it out that night. I didn't tell Deb I filled it out that night. I did
No,
come back.
This is another
This is,
story.
we'll transfer to Deb to hear this part of the story, but I didn't tell Deb that I had done it. And I filled it out, sent it in online. And I did tell her about the pasta sauce, did make pasta sauce that night. I did use oil, but I used less oil. And I then very sheepishly, without really saying something to Deb for the next week or two, avoided eating animal foods and dairy, just kind of like very subtly would just push that stuff to the side of my plate or take a smaller helping. It's not like we ate that much of that anyway, so it wasn't hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of feeling out what might this be like. But in my head, things started to click and I was thinking about my health. And for some reason, even though I've been an environmentalist and a very compassionate human being, I had never really before given much thought to the impact on the environment that my personal consumption had, other than things like, look, we drive electric cars. We live in a house that has net zero. We're powered by the sun. We did think of it all that way, but I never thought about the things that are going in my mouth also have an impact. And these things started to click. And it was like, maybe I should do this whole food plant-based thing. But then I would look at Deb, who loved dairy, loved eggs, loved butter, and
was a baker.
Yep, was an incredible. And so I had this internal conundrum, and I'm going to turn the story over to Deb here to tell her side of it. But the long story short is, within 2 weeks of that conversation with Ron Weiss, I became whole food plant-based and literally have not had a drop of oil, added salt, sugar to our food or any animal products of any kind, no eggs, no dairy, since maybe July 22nd of 2022. So I did it like a light switch, as did Deb, but she'll tell the story. She did it a little later than I did. And within 5 days after doing that, my palate completely changed. I no longer liked coffee. I lost my taste for wine. It was, when we'll talk more about all of that in a second, but I want Deb to share her part of the story. Anyway, Deb will tell her part of the story,
Sure.
but it was really just we just did it and didn't look back. So anyway, I'm gonna give it to Deb.
Okay.
Jason sheepishly called me into his study one afternoon, and I knew that he had been kind of, as much as he thought he was being covert, every good couple, we just know there's something happening, something bubbling under the surface, something, he thinks he's being subtle, but subtlety, well, we can talk about, that's another podcast, I think. So anyway, he called me into his study. He said, Deb, in a very like, I have something to talk to you about, and I'm not really sure how to approach it kind of tone. And he looks up at me, and I think he was wearing like a baseball cap. So he's kind of looking at me from underneath the brim of the hat.
Like a little boy who had gotten caught doing something he's not supposed to do.
It was really dear. At the same time, I felt my heart kind of like racing a little bit, because I'm like, what's happening here? Something's happening. So and as Jason said in his story, we had been foodies throughout our marriage. One of our first one, actually probably like our third or fourth date, I was cooking for him. He was cooking for me. Like, we both just loved to kind of show our affection through food, and all different kinds of food. We both love every kind of ethnic food and wine, and so there's this whole thing of love and food, right? So throughout our lives, and then we raised our kids to love food, and food was love, and all these things, and it becomes problematic when you change your life, as we did, and we can talk more about that in a bit. So he calls me into his study, and he says, Deb, I think, as opposed to he already did, I think I'd like to start seeing Ron Weiss as my doctor, which set a whole chain of thoughts going through my head, because I knew that Ron practiced medicine as food as medicine, with no animal protein, no dairy, no eggs, no oil, salt, or sugar. And I'm thinking, well, if Jason's doing this, and this was just like a whole rush of thoughts that happened in a fraction of a second, then I need to do this too. And
Thank God.
Because, well, the other response that I had at the same time was an expletive that, because this is a podcast, I'm not going to say it, but
it involved the F word and the Y word. Words aimed at me.
Not at all. That's my story. It's not.
I'm kidding.
No, it was just like, damn, I don't want to do this. I don't want to make this change. I don't want to give up certain things. I don't want to create this chasm in our marriage. I don't want to create a chasm with our children, because everything is about food. I don't want to, there's so much to mourn. There's so much to give up. At the same time, you can switch that and say, there's so much to celebrate. There's so much to learn. There's so much to provide with this new way of living if my health is going to improve, if I'm going to lose the extra pounds that I had, if I'm going to become the healthiest person I can possibly be.
I want to interject one thing. Deborah has always been in our relationship the one that realizes the emotional and personal ramifications of our decisions faster than I do. So she's very intuitive, and I'm more rational if you talk about typical personality types. And so for me, intellectually, this is going to improve our health. It's going to kind of end our killing of animals, which is animal suffering, which we don't really like. It's going to help the environment. These are all good things. Deb immediately, in an instant, was able to synthesize, yeah, our entire family life centers around food, and now we're not going to be eating the same way. This is going to really hurt people's feelings and have an impact in a way that I'm not sure I'm ready for. And she got that. I didn't even think about that in the beginning until she expressed that stuff to me. And I was like, oh yeah, that's probably going to be the hardest part of this. So anyway, I'm sorry.
No, it's an important piece.
For sure.
So he says this, and I'm like, okay. And then he starts the process of onboarding with Dr. Ron Weiss's practice and becoming a patient of lifestyle medicine and changing his diet. And I was reluctant. I was kind of hesitant. At the same time, I knew the importance of it, and I knew my cholesterol was like 260, so my cholesterol was even higher than his, and yet I knew that it was ticking time bomb, but I was in denial. So my cholesterol is now 177, so it's terrific.
Yeah.
Lost 40 pounds. I began running again, that I hadn't run, and I was a runner in high school and as a young adult and as a young mom. It's been this incredible transition. I still miss and mourn baked goods. Those are my things that I love. I love butter. I love baking. I love eggs. I don't miss eggs at all. But I do miss the butter, that creaminess of butter. And so as a whole food, plant-based, no salt, oil, or sugar person, we don't even do vegan butter. We don't do processed vegan foods.
Yeah.
So finding those things to create
the tactile sensations for things like crunch, creaminess,
or even pie crust.
Right.
I can't do a real good pie crust anymore.
But
I can make really good cookies with peanut butter and bananas and things. So I'm finding ways.
Our vegan journey really happened in an instant. I mean, the time
it was.
It was a 2-week period from literally the time the thought popped into my head to the time that we were both whole food, plant-based, no SOS.
And our journey in the kitchen was really fascinating because we started making, recipes based on cookbooks. We bought all sorts of cookbooks. Many of the cookbooks we bought weren't great.
We're like, do these people actually eat the food that they put in these cookbooks? Because it's so boring.
It was the first attempt at making pesto after it was horrible. It was like, it had no flavor, it had no texture, it had nothing, it did not resemble anything that your grandmother would have, another grandma recipe was pesto recipe.
There's vegan and then there's herbivore, like as in I'd rather go out and eat the hay in the field than this. So, but that's our vegan journey, to answer your first question.
And it continued to evolve is what I was getting to.
Yeah.
And now we kick butt in the kitchen. We know how to make recipes that are really delicious and have nothing bad in them.
When we have friends over now who are not vegan, we don't even tell them, it's not like we have a conversation and say,
It's
well,
not subversive.
right, but we literally just make a great dish and serve it to them. There's no conversation of, this has no oil, salt, sugar, this is whole food, plant-based, it's just,
Here's what we made.
right, we've
Mhm.
made yellow dal with, roti and enjoy it, and
Mhm.
usually 9 times out of 10, they're like, this is amazing. Like, I could eat like this,
Mhm.
and so it's wonderful.
That's awesome. And I'm really glad that you talked about the journey there in the kitchen, because I think when people hear whole food, plant-based, no salt, oil, sugar, they are like, what the hell am I going to eat? And doesn't everything then just taste the same? So to hear from, and that you guys did it so quickly. So for people who feel like that's impossible, it's too far, I can't go there, it's not going to taste good. I really am glad that you shared that the journey happened so quickly and that it's good now. You enjoy the food.
Oh, yeah, and
We had to learn how to cook again.
and the
Yeah.
other important thing, this can't be overstated enough. Your palate adjusts
Mm,
It's changed.
if you
Yeah.
allow it to, right? And so this
right.
is one of the reasons that Deb and I don't eat some typical vegan processed foods is because they are trying to mimic the traditional foods,
Mhm.
butter or cheese or sweetener. And the problem is, if you allow your palate to adjust to natural foods, whole foods, right? So for sweetener, we'll use dates, okay? We won't use concentrated sugar or honey or syrup, because your palate gets used to that lower level of taste sensation. Everything tastes better.
Mm.
There's this very funny story
It's like
about
awakening.
a patient that went to True North out on the
Oh,
West Coast,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? And where they do all whole food, plant-based, and they specialize in water fasts and stuff like that. When the patient first arrived, he was there for a month, okay? When he first arrived, in the comments, he talked about how bland the food was. And in his comments at the end of the month, he said, I'm sure glad they either changed the chef or the chef got better because the food's delicious now.
Well, yeah, no, actually, he complained to somebody who worked there and they said, oh, just wait a couple of weeks. There's a new chef coming in.
Right.
Uh,
But
And
it's not.
smart.
yeah,
Right.
and there was
That's
no new
smart.
chef, and that's literally what we went through. And
Yeah.
I was a trained, I passed the sommelier exam, so I have a very sensitive palate and was used to critically tasting wines. And like the transformation in my palate, I was very conscious of.
Mm.
I used to start my day with 3 double espressos each morning. And within 5 days of going whole food plant-based, they tasted so strong that they were almost obscene and I couldn't
Mm.
drink it anymore. I then went to brewing my coffee with a paper filter, drip coffee. And within 5 days after that, I was like, I don't like coffee anymore. And now I drink herbal tea because it's much more subtle. And so if I do go back and taste something that's been prepared traditionally with or using honey as a sweetener, it can taste so sweet and cloying to me that I don't enjoy it.
Mm.
But your palate you have to allow it to adjust. Otherwise, the food can taste bland, right? Because you're used to these extremes of saltiness and sugariness and fattiness from the oil. Those
Yeah.
are all very extreme, very addictive flavors. So
Mhm.
anyway,
Well, yes, to that point, it definitely, the palate does change, but at the same time, we knew, eh, despite the fact that our palates hadn't adjusted yet, those first few weeks when we were starting to learn how to cook whole food plant-based, we were not doing a good job.
oh God,
So, yes, our palate needed to adjust to this new way of eating, but we also had to learn a
yes.
new way of cooking
Mhm.
and learn how to find the flavors through herbs and spices and citrus and a little bit of miso or tamari to add a teeny bit of sodium levels, to make things escalate a little bit. And because we all know salt makes, food taste better, so to speak, but it's just, it makes you eat more, and it makes you think that it tastes better because it's brain. So we learned how to use citrus, and we learned how to use some nut butters, and we learned how to use a variety of things to create these really nuanced, escalated, and elevated meals. And it's wonderful.
It was.
Yeah.
I want to switch gears for a second, just if you're okay, Kimberly, and talk about the vegan journey in a different light, because interestingly, when we went back and started telling our family and friends about this change, at least amongst our family and very closest friends, I am fairly certain that Deborah and I could have gone back and said, we're getting divorced, and it would have been met with less shock than, we are no longer eating any animal products. We've gone whole food, plant-based. It was,
It was like we changed our religion. It was like we changed everything.
It was like
joined a cult.
It's like we joined the Moonies. We've given all of our earthly possession over to them, and we're now going to run around in airports and give out handouts. I mean, I'm serious. It was met with that level of, oh my God.
Yeah.
Shock and
shock and mourning, right?
Yep.
And there was a two-way dynamic. We had found this new lifestyle, and we were feeling exceptionally good. Like within 2 weeks of stopping all of these animal products, the health switch in terms of the way we were feeling was really remarkable. I had started to have lots of arthritic symptoms. I'd wake up in the morning, I'd be stiff. That all completely disappeared. I found my thinking more clear than it had been in 15 or 20 years. Even my running and my exercise felt better. I just had this sense of my body is no longer being attacked. And I felt really good.
We felt clean.
So, here we are discovering this new thing. And by the way, from a health standpoint, my cholesterol went from 235. 6 months later, it was 150.
Wow.
Okay. My resting pulse rate as a trained athlete was normally pretty low. It was in the low 50s. It's now in the low 40s. My blood pressure is like 100/60. I have all of the cardiac markers of a 22-year-old, okay, at 56, which is really remarkable. I was always proud that my cardiac markers said I was something like 48, because I was like, hey, that's, 6, 7, 8 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
That's how radically our health was transformed by eating this way. So naturally, we wanted to tell the family and friends, and maybe it even bordered on proselytizing a little bit. And it was annoying to them, coupled with the fact that they were still shell-shocked by it. And that initial 6-month transition, that first family Thanksgiving where we're eating whole food, plant-based at our house instead of having a turkey, where we're not having a traditional dessert, it was really jarring.
Yeah, I mean, for decades, I would make his grandma's pumpkin pie recipe, and I tried something different, whole food, plant-based, and it was not a fail.
It was not very good. So
it's not a fail, but yeah.
And we have.
But the proselytizing was more Jason.
And I got. And it wasn't because I was like, I want you, I love you, I want you to be this healthy and feel this good.
Yeah.
And you realize people have to come to their own decisions about this stuff.
They have to create their own journey.
Exactly. And what I'll say is, for anyone listening to this and thinking about going vegan or whole food, plant-based, for us, the much more difficult challenge was not the switch in the way of eating or cooking. that had its challenges, but it was allowing the relationships with those we love and friends to adjust and heal and have them get used to us going out to a restaurant that we went to with them 100 times and not partake in the joy of sharing the things on the menu and passing it around, like going to a Thai restaurant that we had gone to in Montclair for 10 years.
Remember, I had said earlier, we always experienced food was love and love
Right.
was food. And so we had to help our friends and family adjust to the fact that we still felt that way, but we couldn't necessarily share in all the things that we used to share. And,
Right.
and it was an adjustment for all of us.
Yeah.
And
we're still adjusting.
We're still adjusting.
But we're in a better place than we were a year ago, for sure.
And we have, truthfully, there are some friendships that were very dear to us that are probably irreparably changed. There, some of our foodie friends that we traveled the world with to go to wine regions, and we'd go and have these decadent meals with cheese and meats and beautiful bottles of wine. And we loved those times. I don't want to go back and undo them. They were amazing experiences. I just can't do them now because of the way we eat. And I am very happy this way, as is Deb, but our friends take it as almost a judgment of them. Like, well, you still eat that way, and so we're not eating that way. It's almost like we're saying to them, you're bad people.
Yeah,
and
like they've been rejected.
Right, and we're not. Anyway, we love them and we miss those times, but I'm not going to harm my own health or harm other beings and creatures or the planet selfishly just because our friends want us to have steak and cheese at a meal. So that's a hard part of living this lifestyle that you just have to get used to. And most of the people that really, really matter to us have come around. And even, our son, who's a tremendous foodie, he will go out of his way, like, Dad, Mom, let's go to this 00 pizza restaurant in New York. It's plant-based. And it's really a loving gesture on his part. And we take it as such. And we're hugely thankful that people try to do that. And so that's something as part of the vegan journey that I'm sure people think of. And I think that's one of the harder parts, right?
Yeah.
It's a roadblock for many people, I think.
Yeah. If you had one thing to say to the listeners who are feeling that would be too hard, I don't know how to tell my family how to work through this, is there one thing that you would suggest that they start with, or a way to approach it?
I can think of something immediately, and that is just be loving and honest, and just, don't make it about a judgment or in an absolute, they say everything in moderation. It's not really, it doesn't really work for this way of eating. You can't be moderately whole food plant-based. It just doesn't work. But at the same time, when it comes to the emotion and the feelings that you have about making a transition and maybe abandoning someone that you love because you feel like you need to go this route, just be honest with yourself and this person you love and say, I need to try this. Will you help me? I mean, if you feel that you need help, right? It's just about communication and honesty, I think.
And I would answer in a slightly different way. I totally agree with what Deb said. I would, depending on the situation, even if it's a white lie a little bit, I would blame it on my health.
Right.
I would say, I've changed the way I'm eating because my doctor said I have some things that I need to change in my diet. Otherwise, I may have some serious health issues. That third party validation very often switches. It's like this.
It doesn't become a you versus me.
I give the following example.
Yeah.
If I went to someone and said, I just had a heart attack and now I need to eat this way, almost 100% of your friends, family, loved ones would be supportive of that.
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
If on the other hand, you go and you say, I don't want to have a heart attack, so I'm going to eat this way, 5% will be loving, supportive, and what have you. It's
Mhm.
this bizarre trait that we humans have. In crisis, we step up and are tremendously beautiful beings, but we have to push it to the crisis in order for us to kick that in. Look at climate change. We've known about climate change for decades. Only now that we have cities burning, tides rising, you know,
That we're acting.
that we start to
Still
get
not
that,
fast enough.
oh, wow, we probably need to do something about this. So
Mhm.
blame it on your doctor. It makes it a lot easier. Even if it's not 100% truthful, you're definitely going to improve your health.
And here I was saying, it's all about honesty.
And, right. Well,
You know, to a degree, but I agree with you, Jay. I think, you know, saying that it's, you know, it's not necessarily, yeah, the response is generally much better if you have that outside, I
Mhm.
need to do this.
Yeah.
But then you can go to, and I'd love your help, and I'd love, you know,
right.
to have you
Mhm.
join me on this journey, or, you know, support me on this journey.
Yeah. Even Dr. Doug Lisle says that, right? He in his talk, he'll
Yeah.
The Pleasure Trap, he'll talk about
Yeah.
just tell your family, "Hey, my doctor said I should do this. I'm trying it out." And then usually they'll just be like, "All right, no problem." So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
that's great. So you mentioned climate change, and early on you mentioned your farm and being net zero. So let's talk about Coldbrook Farm. What why'd you do it? What does it mean? Give me
Sure.
all the stuff.
Um,
Yeah,
so
that's a long
What a
story.
yeah,
big question.
yeah,
But it's a good story, and it had a basis in wanting to live somewhere beautiful. We raised our children and lived in Montclair for almost 30 years, or in the Montclair area. And I grew up in New York City and upstate New York, and Jason grew up in New Jersey. So I still had like an umbilical cord attached to New York City. So living in Montclair was, you know, 13 miles west. It was as far as I could stretch to
Mhm.
leave that area and leave New York and leave the accessibility of being in the city if I wanted to be in the city.
Yeah.
But then a number of things happened in our lives. Jason's mom got cancer and passed away, and my mom and dad both had died prior to that. And Jason's father is still living in Montclair, but our kids were grown, and we wanted to live somewhere beautiful.
Mhm.
linking the two together. Um, we always wanted to, you know, Deb and I would talk romantically about, we want to sit on the porch and watch the sunset over, you know, a beautiful expanse of nature. Deborah has always been incredibly nature oriented, me much less so, although always an environmentalist, always looking at things like pollution and development. You know, if I would see a new housing development go in and see trees being knocked down, it would literally hit me
Mm.
in the gut. You know, I was on the you know, charitable boards that work towards preservation of coral reefs, and so I always had an environmental awareness. And Deb and I would talk about spending our older years together in a beautiful place. We typically thought of that being Sonoma County, Vermont, New York State, Massachusetts kind of thing, not central Western New Jersey. But
Never in 1,000 years, but go
two
ahead.
things happened. As Deb said, our kids got older. My dad and mom and Deb's mom and my mom were both very, very youthful in up until they got diagnosed with cancer. Deb's mother was melanoma, and my mother was breast cancer. And they both died truly horrific cancer type deaths that you wouldn't wish on anybody. And what it implanted in both of our minds was, you don't have an unlimited time in this incredible place and planet. So that dream of living in somewhere beautiful that we kept putting off into the future, their deaths was a catalyst for, let's do that as soon as we can, as opposed to let's do that when we're 65 or 68. And when you couple that with, as a trained cyclist who used to race 100-mile bike races, I used to have to do some really long training rides. And so for decades, would do some training rides that took me from Montclair all the way out to here where we live now, which is Oldwick, New Jersey. And the Oldwick General Store was one of the places that some of our longer training rides would stop as a midpoint to turn around.
And Jason noticed the more he rode and over the years, the further away from Montclair he would have to go to see country.
Yeah.
Like with things developing and
Yep.
things building and farmland was disappearing, and our intention was not to build Coldbrook Farm. Our intention was to move to a pretty place and have a few acres and have a home garden and be able to go bird watching and, you know, be in nature. As an environmental educator, I just wanted to be out here, you know, teaching kids and adults about beautiful native plants and birds. And
right. We weren't thinking about becoming farmers, certainly. And
that was a
but
total moment of insanity. But
and I think
yes and
no, what I would say is it was us being true to the journey that we were on. Some things about your life, if you really listen to everything around you and you experience your life in a very mindful way, you go places that you can't imagine. And I would say this was one of them. And so
that's very Seussical.
So what happened was, like Deb said, we started looking in places like Harding, you know, Morris County. We wanted a minimum of 3 acres. We wanted to have a home garden so that we could grow some of our own food. And we wanted it to be somewhere beautiful that looked more rural. And this was my thinking was, we have friends and family that are in Montclair, that are in New York City. There's no way we're upping and moving to Vermont, Massachusetts. So let's look in Western New Jersey. We start looking for 3 acres. And if you look in Harding at 3 acres of undeveloped land or a tear down that's on 3 acres, and you look at the price of that, and you look ultimately where we ended up. So we ended up paying a fraction of the price of that for 43 acres. And this 43 acres that we found, okay, happened to have a 13-acre farm plot on it. And so there was 13 acres of farm and the rest was woods and wetland. And as environmentalists and naturalists, that's like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden we're like, what the heck do we do with the 13 acres of farm?
Right.
And that's how we became farmers. It became one of,
we found this piece of land and now we have to do this.
right.
But I will say in Montclair, in our half-acre suburban yard, we had a little home garden. We had blueberry and raspberry plants. We had all native plants. Well, I said we had a home garden of, you know, our vegetable patch. We had tomatoes and cucumbers and herbs. And then started planting all native plants in our yard. So we had very little grass and we started to kind of make this habitat. We wanted to create a habitat even in our suburban area, which is a big thing. And if anybody out there is interested in learning more about this, go to Homegrown National Park. It's an amazing grassroots effort to create habitat and save the planet, basically. So we kind of started there and said, wow, we could do so much more.
And so as environmentalists, we're on this piece of property and we know we're going to have to build a house, right? And remember how I said, you know, when I see new development, it makes me cringe, because I want to just say the following. There is no such thing as sustainable development, right? We live on a finite rock, okay? Earth is only so big. You can't sustainably develop it, period. So we felt this incredible responsibility. If we're going to build a house, it needs to be as environmentally sensitive as humanly possible. we need to ensure that the acreage that we now are stewards of does as much for the planet as it possibly can, and that ideally we turn this place into a better place for the environment than when we inherited it, right?
Mhm.
So our home was built with all, locally sourced materials, as few synthetic materials that are environmentally harming as possible. We generate enough power. As a matter of fact, last year we generated 5 megawatts more than we used. It's an all-electric house. We have no propane, no
fossil-
oil, no gas.
No fossil fuels, not even our roof is made with shingle.
Wow.
Exactly. So we did all of that. Even to the extent of like our flooring in our house. We know the family whose forest, came to know the family whose forest these trees came from. And they practice forestry. It's Hull Forest Products. They're up in Connecticut. They practice forestry in a sustainable manner, right? We did that in every aspect of building the house. The area around the house, we put in permaculture, and permaculture creates food for us and food for living creatures, for pollinators, for animal life, for birds. And the reality of it is that this 43 acres of property is now so much more of a thriving ecosystem than it was when there was 13 acres of GMO corn on it, which was just monoculture and chemically farmed. And it's now regeneratively, organically farmed. And you see it, like the wildlife that's here now, just 3.5 years later, is mind-bogglingly different and more diverse.
It's
Wow.
if you build it, they will come.
Yes.
And they have.
And
it's-
and we
it's remarkable.
grow
Yeah.
probably close to 100 different fruits, berries, vegetables, nuts,
Native
herbs,
plants.
and
Wow.
as well as what we sell commercially, which is heirloom grains that we grow on the main farm field. And we've only been doing that 4 years, and our grain has gained the kind of following which is really pretty remarkable. It's gotten into some of the best bakeries and kitchens in the New York metro area. And it's been a wonderful journey.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Are your grains the ones at the Ethos Farm Market?
Some of
Some
them.
of them,
Some of
yes.
them. Okay.
Right now at Ethos, it's winter, so they're closed.
Yeah.
But early season next year, our oats will still be there. And then we grew oats this past season. Right now on the field, we have an heirloom-ish kind of wheat. It's from the 1800s. It's a kind of
Redeemer.
wheat called Redeemer.
Oh.
Yeah, and we'll harvest that in July of 2024, and that will certainly be at the Ethos Farm Market towards the latter part of next season. Yeah.
Okay. I had those oats at Ethos and they were wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
So let's talk about Ethos. It's come up a few times. That's how we connected through an
Yes.
email from Ethos. So I too have seen Dr. Weiss just once a few years ago, and I want to echo what you said about him and his emotional connection to things. As he and I talked through some of the stuff I was dealing with at that time, he had tears in his eyes.
Yep.
And it was so genuine, and anytime I see him around the farm, because when the market is open, my husband and I are there every weekend, and he's so friendly, and he'll talk to you, and you don't have to be one of his patients in order for him to have a conversation. And Nora and the farmers are amazing, and I know that you are now really involved with Ethos. Tell me about that. What are you doing? How are you working with them?
So, I joined Ethos's board earlier this year. I can't remember if it was January or February. I will shamelessly say it's the first charity that I've been on numerous charitable boards. Deb is on Raritan Headwaters board right now. It ties together so many things that are vitally important at this point in humanity. And when I moved out here with Deb, of course, I promised her I was going to slow down. I've been a serial entrepreneur. I've been on charitable boards, and my life is invariably packed with more things to do than hours in the day. And I promise no more charitable boards for a while. I'm just gonna,
Can I interrupt you
Yeah.
just for a sec? And that is, building a house and learning how to farm and being stewards of 43 acres over the last 4 years.
took a little bit of time.
Yeah. So the fact that both of us were asked to join boards within such a short period of time, moving out here, we both knew that it was the right thing to do, but it was also like to say, I'm going to slow down. Again, it's part of the journey, right? You don't know where life is going to take you. And you can say these things at the outset, but at the same time, your heart is going to lead you to a place that you feel you're needed, where and where it also is an incredibly fulfilling thing to do.
And so thus, looking at Ethos, so I'm on the board, and the reason is what Ethos Farm to Health. So there's Ethos Primary Care, which is Dr. Weiss's medical practice, and that is a for-profit medical practice because medical practices have to be. Although I would imagine his practice is not terribly profitable because of how much time he lavishes with his patients and the caring approach that he takes. And then there's Ethos Farm to Health, which is the charity that manages the farm as well as programs. The three primary programs that Ethos Farm to Health runs is the Next Generation Farmers Program and Next Generation Physicians Program, along with something called Effect. And Effect is where Dr. Weiss has given over 100 acres of the farm to be replanted with native prairie grasses that used to be in this part of the country, to regenerate that soil. It was a former GMO cornfield, much like our field here. And working with Rodale and Rutgers and people like that, they took core samples before anything was changed, when it was a GMO cornfield, and now it has been planted with native grasses. And I believe NJ Autobahn was part of it too.
Yes.
And they will now do, 5 years in, they'll do core samples again to see the carbon capture as a possible strategy, both for regenerating farm soil that has been badly damaged by conventional agriculture, as well as carbon capture to try to help global warming, and see what those levels of carbon capture are, and then revert this field that's been regenerated back to agriculture in a community-based way, where we will be able to give long-term leases to farmers that do not have access to their own land, so that they can farm 2 to 5 acres of this 100-acre plot, to help them farm, have access to land, create healthy food for people to eat, and create this incredible community. Because if you think about it, if you have 100 acres and you have 2 to 5 acres per farm, Ethos right now, all of the fruits and vegetables that it grows is all on 2 acres, right?
Oh, wow.
Even though it's a 340-acre farm, okay? So there will one day be potentially 15 to 20 other farmers farming that land, including farmers from the inner city. We have ties to the city of Newark, where those people will be able to come out as aspiring farmers, have access to land, hopefully one day even live on the property so that there doesn't need to be the commuting back and forth.
Yeah.
And really create this hub of regenerative agriculture, right? So there's that, there's training those farmers to become regenerative farmers, and we train on the order of 2 new farmers a year. And then there's also training the next generation physicians through Dr. Weiss's medical practice, where these young aspiring physicians will learn to practice medicine the way that Ron practices. And to echo what you said, when I got back my 6-month blood work and I had had all these tremendous health strides, Ron literally became teary-eyed. And he goes, do you see, you have made this tremendous change and this tremendous commitment, and look at what it has done to you. your effective body age has gone from 48. I think by then I was down to 28. I wasn't all the way where I am now. He said, you have put 20 years back on your biological life. And he was teary-eyed.
Yeah.
When do you get a physician that behaves that way?
Right.
Usually it's a 5-minute conversation to prescribe a drug.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
I can think of no charitable effort in this area that ties together all the things that are important to Deborah and me, right? So there is climate, because make no mistake, the number one thing you as a human being can do to stop climate change is to stop eating animals,
protein,
right?
Yeah.
If everyone on the planet, and I'm under no illusion that this is possible, but if everyone on the planet stopped eating animal protein tomorrow, it would free up a landmass the size of the continent of Africa. Okay. Just because right now, the way typical human diet works, you grow plants to feed animals to feed us. Okay. So you have this middleman, which are the animals, even forgetting about all the ethical considerations with that. Okay. Even if you don't personally care, even if you don't personally care about the suffering of the animals or what have you, the reality of it is it's an incredibly poor, from an efficiency standpoint, way to create calories for human consumption. So anyway, Ethos works on that through whole food plant-based medicine, trains other physicians to teach lifestyle medicine and eating this way, trains farmers to farm in a regenerative agricultural way, all under one roof. And so it was this just moment of, how can I not help this? As an environmentalist, as someone who cares about human health and food systems, how can I not be part of this board? And so that's why I joined the board.
Well, one thing that Jason neglected to include in this wonderful summary of what Ethos is about is they also, with this physician training program as well as farmer training program, they are trying to encourage getting good, healthy, wholesome food into areas of inner cities where there is a food desert.
Exactly. I alluded to the work that we do in Newark. You're right, Deb. And that is food equity, right? And it's important enough that we just had farm days this past summer in September, which is a day where the farm is opened up to people to come, and almost 500 people came.
Ethos Farm had farm days.
Right. And
not Coldbrook.
Right. And Cory Booker, Senator Booker,
so good.
came, and he is a huge champion of regenerative agriculture, small farms, equality in the food system, giving real good, healthy food to people of all socioeconomic and ethnic backgrounds, because literally the food we are eating as typical Americans is killing us. We are literally eating foods that are causing diabetes, causing heart disease, causing cancer. And when you go into a store in some of the inner cities, there is no fresh fruit, vegetables. You have a choice of all packaged processed foods that are loaded with fats, sugars, and it's a horrific state of affairs. I think 40% of Americans now have at least one, over the age of 30, have at least one chronic health condition. And I think, or maybe it's 60%, and then 40% have at least two. It's an astronomical number. And it's only getting worse. So,
Wow, so important. And, I'm there regularly. Like I said, I'm there every weekend when the farm is open. I was at day 2 of farm days, and I didn't even realize all of the incredible things that are going on. So thank you for sharing all of that background. You mentioned, and where I want to be conscious of time, but I do have a couple more things. So when we initially met, Jason, you mentioned someone named Doug Tallamy, or and if I'm mispronouncing his last name, definitely correct me. Tallamy. So tell me, you mentioned that he is someone that if you care about the environment, he's somebody that you need to know about.
This is
Tell
Deb.
me, Deb.
Okay, so I mentioned briefly Homegrown National Park. That's actually a grassroots organization that he kind of co-founded. But Doug Tallamy is an entomologist. Entomologist is insects, right?
I think so, yeah.
Or is it entomologist? Yes. Yeah, it's etymology or entomology, that words and insects. I always get the two confused, but he's out of University of Delaware. And he is a PhD in insects. And he has done numerous studies of the impact on native plants and insect relationships. And so native plants and insects have these relationships that go back millennia, because it's funny, Kimberly, it all is about the food. All goes back to food. So what are these insects eating? They're eating the leaves of these plants, and the plants create these chemicals to protect themselves. But over the millennia, these insects and these plants have learned how to coexist. And so through the trends of gardening and home gardening and things, we have brought in all these horrible invasive plants throughout the decades that gardens have become, and lawns are another thing. Lots of chemicals, lots of water. So Doug Tallamy, he has written numerous books. Bringing Nature Home, I think, was one of his first. And that is a book that talks about the importance of planting native plants to save the planet, because it saves the insects, which then is the baseline for all the web, the food web. And we are in that food web. So if the insects disappear, we disappear.
Right. And so
it's a vital thing. So he is your resource. He has created written books about, as I said, Bringing Nature Home, The Nature of Oaks, Nature's Best Hope. Those are three of the titles.
All of them are geared towards having us as humans coexist with nature in the built environment. He's under no illusion, right? We're not going to stop building houses.
Right.
But if you do live on a house in a suburb, or even an apartment where you have a little fire escape, he gives real things that you can do to better the environment, such that we can give a lot back to nature that we don't even think about, by replacing non-native plants with native plants, getting rid of your typical lawn and planting things that create far more biodiversity.
Getting rid of invasive plants and putting in native plants.
So check out Doug Tallamy. It's amazing what you can do as an individual to better the planet in very simple ways.
I'll give them.
Let's because we're short on time.
Okay.
So Deb, I've got one quick question before I get to my final question. You mentioned that you're a bird watcher.
Yes.
What's your spark bird?
Oh, my spark bird. I think it's probably, so both my parents were birders, and I started, I have memories of a trip out to Denver when I was 5 years old, and I was sandwiched sweating on the Naugahyde seats, right? The vinyl seats between my two older sisters. And I'm 5, so I'm the shortest one, and I have the perfect view between the two front seats to the windshield. And my parents, had their binoculars, were driving. They're arguing because they're driving and navigating places we'd never gone, from upstate New York to Denver. Don't go to Des Moines. Don't take the right turn. Anyway, so my memory is we're driving and we're in the plains before we get to the mountains of Denver. And I say, I see an eagle, and it was a golden eagle.
Oh, wow.
And my parents, the attention that they showered me with after that moment probably made that my spark bird. How I would say, realistically, I think it's the American kestrel, which used to be called sparrowhawk when I was little. Because that was another thing that I thought was just an extraordinary bird, and we would see them all the time. And now we see them again. They're coming.
That's awesome. Mine's the tufted titmouse.
Oh, I love that.
Great bird.
They're so adorable, and
they're so cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a lot of them around here, and that just really got me into like learning more about birds. Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So I have one final question for you guys.
Okay.
Tell me about your favorite hummus or your favorite way to eat hummus or a story about hummus.
Yay, hummus.
We love hummus.
Yeah, the hummus has been part of our diet
Forever. Even before we went, whole food plant-based, we would, get cans of chickpeas and make hummus.
So let's do it together at the same time, right?
Okay.
Chickpeas.
And we like to soak the chickpeas now and use the fresh, like the dried beans.
Right.
So they're just so much better.
Fresh chickpeas, right? Garlic.
Yeah, multiple cloves of garlic, lots of garlic, lemon and lemon zest. So lemon zest and lemon juice.
Right.
Need that.
Yep.
A lot of it.
Tahini. Good organic tahini. A tablespoon or two of that. You don't have to go hog wild with it, but enough of it to give it a little bit of that sesame flavor.
Absolutely. And then cumin.
A nice dash of cumin to taste. And then put that all in a Vitamix. If you need to water it down a bit, one of the things we do when we make beans or any kind of beans, including garbanzo beans or chickpeas, after we take the chickpeas out when they're cooked, we take the water. And by the way, while we cook them, we add things like cloves of garlic, maybe a bay leaf or two, some fresh herbs, so that cooking liquid, we then strain everything out of, and we reduce that cooking liquid by like almost 80-90%. So you get this incredibly wonderful flavored liquid that doesn't have any added salt, doesn't have any added sugar or oil, but it's
just lots of flavor.
Just lots of flavor. And we'll add some of that back to the hummus in order to increase the flavor
and create the right consistency.
And take your favorite fresh vegetable or toasted whole grain bread, dip and enjoy.
Fantastic. Oh, that sounds so good. I never thought to put lemon zest into my hummus. So I'm gonna give that a go. Thank you for that.
The only negative about that is when you use zests in anything, that's where a lot of the oil resides, and the oil will go rancid in 5 or 6 days.
Yes, it doesn't stay as long.
It reduces the shelf life, but increases the flavor. And also that's where the healthiest part of citrus is. It's in that rind that we normally throw out.
Yeah.
And I will say, it's not like hummus lasts forever.
Right. No way.
It's not like it lasts more than the one meal for which it's made.
Exactly.
So you don't have to worry about shelf life with hummus.
Same. Here we're plowing right through it.
Kimberly, thank you so much for what you do. What an incredible resource you've created for people trying to figure out this lifestyle. And knowing you personally and having met you only recently, I can't wait for a journey together as people, because you and your husband, more conversations, more great stuff for us to do together. But this podcast is a real gem, and we're proud to be part of it.
Thank you so much. I really am so honored that you both were able to do this with me, and I can't wait for the listeners to hear it. And I too look forward to our blossoming relationship.
Lots of love to you guys.
Yeah,
be well.
Same to you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back. We definitely covered a lot in this episode. There are so many helpful tips and insights throughout. I've also included links to all of the organizations mentioned in this episode in the show notes. Also, can we just stop for a moment and just think about how impressive it is that their net zero farm has actually generated more electricity than they needed? To connect with Jason and Deb, visit their website, coldbrookfarmnewjersey.com, and follow them on Instagram at Coldbrook Farm. I hope you found this episode helpful and inspiring. Please subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're loving it, please give Did You Bring the Hummus a 5-star rating and leave a review. It's an easy way to keep supporting the show. Be sure to share these episodes with your friends. If you're finding something good here, they will too. If you're a vegan or know a vegan who would be a great fit for the podcast, follow the Be a Guest link in the show notes. Fill out the quiz and I'll be in touch. I also have that freebie I keep mentioning on my website. sign up for my mailing list, and get a PDF of 3 amazing vegan recipes. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Did You Bring the Hummus, and visit my website, didyouBringTheHummus.com, for more information about me, updates on what I'm working on, new podcast episodes, and all things vegan. Finally, I would love to hear from you. What do you need help with? Is there a topic you want to hear covered on a future episode? DM me on Instagram or send me an email at didyouBringTheHummus@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.